And when we were younger, well, the last few years I was home, they used to have a man neighbor used to drive the co-op truck. They had a co-op store in Tracadie at that time and a credit union. And he drove the co-op truck, and on Sunday he'd come up with the truck and he'd have sideboards on it and take a tarp over the top, and he'd take people to church on Sundays. And then there was another guy who used to do the same thing after he stopped, and he used to take a crowd to town on Saturday night.
I know this is going back quite a bit, but back to your time growing up in Merland, what was it like growing up in Merland?
A one-room school, and at one time there was 44 children from grades primary to grade 11 and one teacher. And in the winter time, well, all the kids had to walk to school, and there was a lot of them had 3 or 4 miles to go, so they went until Christmas, and then they didn't go anymore till after Easter. So during the winter months there was only maybe 5 or 6 of us there, and we'd sit around. They had a wood stove in the middle of the school, and we'd sit around the stove on benches doing our work.
And you were one of these 5 students then?
Pardon?
You were one of these 5 students?
Yeah.
When all the other students, about 40 or so, didn't show up, why did you show up?
Well, we lived close to the school. We could walk in 5 minutes. We used to go home for our lunch. We never took lunches there. And in those days, well, my mother never used to buy peanut butter, for one thing. And the kids used to come to school and they'd have peanut butter sandwiches, and they used to smell so good. The only time my mother would buy peanut butter is if she was making sandwiches for a dance or something. And when I first went to Toronto, I had to take my lunch to work. Well, I ate peanut butter sandwiches for a year or more, and I was for years I couldn't look at it. And
going back to your time growing up in Merland, what were some of your chores and responsibilities?
well, I always had to milk the cows morning and evening. My brother and, well, my 2 brothers, well, and they used to get the kindling in and the wood, because you'd have to pile up behind the stove with wood for the night. So I always had to do the burn work with my father, and they did the wood. And my father never liked the boys taking the horses out or anything. He always wanted me to go, and he didn't trust them because he thought the world of his horses, and he was afraid that the boys wouldn't look after them as well as I did. So anyway, he used to tell me that horses wouldn't drink water when you bring a pail of water into their stall for them. He'd say, well, they won't drink for me like they do for you. So I always had to go and look after them. And we had one gray mare. The last one he had, she died after I went to Toronto. And when she'd drink right down to the bottom of the bucket, and then she'd put her head up over mine and let the last mouthful down over my head. And she wouldn't do it to anyone else. She seemed to know me. I have to milk the cows too, morning and night. I think I said that. And we usually had hens too, and we had sheep. And we used to have to wash the wool, and we'd take it down to the brook because you had to wash it in cold water. And then after it was washed, you had to pick all the pieces of grass and stuff that would get tangled up in the wool. You'd have to pick it all out. And then my mother didn't have time for all that. She used to send the wool to Sylvan Valley up here. There used to be a mill where they used to spin the yarn. And we used to make our own butter. I did that a good many times. And they used to save most people in the cellar. They had a well dug that you could put the creamer. They had like it was a tank about that high, and there was a glass gauge on the side where you could see the milk, and when the thing would be full you wouldn't see it, but when it'd get down lower you could see how much cream was on top of the milk. And when it get down to the bottom, they'd skim the cream off and put it in the churn to make the butter.
Also, going back to your time growing up in Merland, what were some of the activities you did for fun or leisure?
Well, we used to have an old gramophone. It was the kind that you wind, and with the spring and break on it, which it did quite often, I used to turn it with my finger, and I'd get blisters on my finger from turning the record to play the machine. And then we had a battery radio after that. We didn't have a radio at that time. But our main thing that we did in the winter, we'd go coasting. And there was 3 big hills behind from our house in Burn from the road, and to walk from the road up, it would take us pretty near an hour to walk to the top of the hill. So in the winter, all the kids that were at school would come over to go coasting. They'd all bring their sleds to school, and they'd just have time to make one trip to the top of the last hill and then coast all the ways down to the road. And by that time it was time to go back to school. And that was our main thing. Some kids had skates, but there was really no place to go skating. There was a swamp at the bottom of our field by the road, but some of them used to go skating on it, but it was too rough really for skates. And the older people used to make their own skates. They used to make them out of a foil, a flat foil, and turn them. My father made them in the forge. And they were strapped onto the boots instead of the boot and skate all together.